a deep, sorry, obviously we're being recorded, that's fine. Just to, just to carry on. So, of course, we're gathered online given the circumstances which allow us really to follow a deep sermon on the Pancha Indriya and Bala by Bhante Hokandra Pannavamsa. Of course, Bhante Pannavamsa needs no introduction to all of us here today. I think we've all had our own experiences and our own insight with Bhante. But if you would permit me to say, personally, of course, I must say that one of the things that I find extraordinary about Bhante's sermons, and especially today, I very much look forward to, as I hope all of you, is his clarity of explanation, which really fosters an ease of comprehension, I believe, which in turn encourages curiosity and an enhanced understanding of the Dhamma. And this particularly has drawn me closer to the Dhamma, for which I personally am grateful, and I hope all of you will feel the same today at the end of this discussion. So, Bhante is currently the abbot of the Dhamma Centre in Colchester in the UK. And moving on, I think one of the, I'm just checking that you're all seeing my screen, yes?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, great. So today's session is organized by the Insight Meditation Center in Colombo. And of course, we're all deeply appreciative of the good work that has been done by the Dhamma Center, and in recognition particularly of the propagation of Dhamma in the UK. And so the organizers would be very grateful if you were so inclined and you felt it within your means to contribute towards the fostering of this good work by any contributions that you might be able to make to via the website www.dhammacentre.uk, where you can make any online donations. Today's Dhamma session, as I said, is by this Insight Meditation Center, and the IMC is particularly working towards fostering and organizing Dhamma sessions where you can have medical practitioners, not only simply in the ways of the Dhamma, but particularly towards meditation. And they're all volunteers, and they work with, of course, the advice of Bhikkhu Venerable Bamragama Somaratna Thero, and they conduct a variety of programs online as well, particularly focused towards mindfulness programs for children and monthly sutta discussions, Abhidharma sessions, both in English and Sinhala, and yoga classes, and of course sermons and meditation sessions for services, for devotees on request. In light of this, one of the things which we thought might be particularly useful in this situation of a pandemic where there's less access to having sermons and having opportunities to share the Dhamma, should anyone feel that they would like to organize a session such as this, then the IMC is happy to assist in organizing this. And perhaps if you would like more information about this, you could go on the website. Also, there's a YouTube channel, and you could certainly contact Surekha. I've given the phone number there, so 0777281500, bearing in mind this is Sri Lankan, so +94, and Inoka on 0777480119. I'll share those numbers again at the end of the session. And today's session has been sponsored by Well-Wisher in memory of their departed relatives and friends, and with blessings for all beings at this time of the pandemic. Just before we start, just a few points of etiquette. Of course, if you feel so inclined, it would be wonderful if you could turn on your video, if at all possible, simply because it would be nice for Bhante to have some faces to speak to, and not simply a blank screen. Of course, we would be mindful of the way we sit and present ourselves. Ideally, if one is seated, it would be perhaps better. We should be aware of our backgrounds. These days, I think everyone's on Zoom quite a lot for work and personal matters, so perhaps this is something that comes as the norm. Particularly, just a gentle reminder not to consume any meals during the discussion, so that we can all really focus our attention on what is being said, and that we can listen attentively. Very importantly, of course, that we keep our mics muted until the point comes where we can maybe discuss some questions, and Bhante will guide us on that. If you have any questions at the end of this session, what we would ask you to do is, if you go to the text box and you can actually type in your questions, and if you can make it visible to all, so rather than simply writing directly to Bhante, so that we can help administer that as well. Otherwise, Bhante is trying to explain and look at the questions and read them out and all of that. So we can assist a little bit like that. If you can please send the questions visible to everyone. And I think, without further ado, I think I will make myself scarce, because we would really want to follow what today's discussion is about. And so, without further ado, Bhante, I graciously welcome you. We're very honored and privileged to have you with us today. We are delighted that you have been able to take this time. As I said, personally, Bhante has been very much a part of my journey back into the Dhamma, and for this I'm of course always grateful, and the clarity and the wisdom that Bhante brings, we all look forward to sharing today. So Bhante, without further ado, welcome, and we look forward to sharing your sermon.
After that introduction, I really hope I don't flop.
Not at all.
Let's just share my screen. Is that a yes?
Yes, we can see your screen, Bhante. Yes, we can see your screen.
Okay. Let us chant before we. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. So today's session focuses, or we hope to focus on, the Indriyas and the Balas. Although I have mentioned Bala within the topic, most of the focus of the session would be on Indriya, because a section on Bala, which translates to powers, is essentially a skill that is present for arahants, enlightened beings, right? Of course, there are certain definitions of how we could then connect it to lay people as well, which I will be doing and explaining as we go about. So, Indriya, like many of the doctrines or doctrinal points available within or presented through the Dhamma by the Buddha, the term Indriya, which means leader, comes originally from a Vedic context. So Indriya essentially means, or what the Vedic meaning or original meaning of the word Indriya is, the power of Indra. Who is Indra? Indra is the Vedic god in Hinduism or Brahmanism. So what does this define? What is a god, or why would we, or why, what is the aspect of Indra? Indra exercises control and influence over, I'm sorry for the typos, over his dominion. What is then the Buddhist context or Buddhist meaning of the word Indriya? Indriya should be understood as a faculty or a controlling faculty which filters, controls, and paves way for the way by which we analyze, understand, grasp anything which comes through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. Is that understood? Right? We know that this being, or whatever it is that we know, understand, see, feel, characteristics, personalities, all of that is derived through the data which we perceive through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, and body. What is the classification of Indriya? There are 5 types of faculties or spiritual faculties in Buddhism. The first is the faculty of faith, the faculty of effort, faculty of mindfulness, the faculty of samadhi and wisdom. I'm going to go into these as we go along. The faculty of faith. And where bhikkhus is the faculty of faith to be seen. This is connected to, or the faculty of faith can effectively be seen within the 4 limbs of stream winning, which is traditionally it would be wise faith in the 3 jewels, meaning Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha, and moral virtue dear to the noble, meaning the virtue that is respected by a person who has attained enlightenment. I do not really like the first definition, meaning the traditional one, because the purpose is, the reason I don't like it is because it can cause a bit of confusion. I'll explain as to why that is as we go along. So the first is association with true individuals, meaning good individuals, kalyana mitras. Hearing of the Dhamma, the true teaching. Third is wise attention, yoniso manasikara. And fourth is the practicing the Dhamma in accordance with the Dhamma. Remember, in accordance with the Dhamma is a very important aspect of that 4th part. Because we sometimes assume that we might be practicing Dhamma, but at the end, what we truly might be practicing is, rather than Dhamma, it is Buddhist culture. We must clearly understand the difference between Buddhist culture and Buddhist philosophy. It is 2 very, very different practices. The faculty of effort. And where bhikkhus is a faculty of effort to be seen. It is to be seen in the 4 right strivings. Emphasis on the word right. The 4 sammappadana. The first is the effort to prevent the arising of unarisen wholesome states. The second is the effort to abandon arisen unwholesome states. The third is the effort to cultivate unarisen wholesome states. And the fourth is to maintain arisen wholesome states, right? These are definitions. I'm going to connect them to our daily life as we go along, right? But remember, when we say right effort, what we mean or what we are talking about are these 4, right? At the end of the session, we will be allowing for question and answers. If you have any doubts, you can very well ask any question that you want. Mindfulness. And where bhikkhus is a faculty of mindfulness to be seen. The faculty of mindfulness is to be seen or can be seen through the contemplation of the Satara Satipatthana, which is a contemplation of the body, feelings, the mind, and the Dhammas. We are not going to go deep into what they are today, because what we are focusing on is the importance and the practice of understanding what the Indriyas and how the inner workings of Indriya are. Samadhi. Samadhi are the 4 jhanas. Now, I have not translated Samadhi. Usually it would be translated as concentration. But for clarity, I have not translated samadhi here. Why? Because concentration is effectively not samadhi in practice. Why? Because if you take the word concentration, I have given a small sort of thing here. Concentration is not an effective translation of the word samadhi. Concentration is a state of doing. Samadhi is a state of being. Doing implies, the action of doing implies a reinforcement of Atta, which is self, ego, and the being as we know it. So for example, for me, if I am doing something that is right by Bhante Pannavamsa. But the thing is, Bhante Pannavamsa cannot attain Nibbana. Because Bhante Pannavamsa is a concept of ego, supported by all the data that I have clung on to. Is that understood? Right? If you cannot understand, please put it on the chat. Kishani, unmute yourself then and let me know. Bhante, can you please explain that again? And I will be very happy to go over it in a different manner. Okay?
Of course, Bhante. Sure.
Please feel relaxed to question and to make your understanding known, right? While samadhi is a state arising due to the suppression of the pancha nivarana. The pancha nivarana are the hindrances. The hindrances are connected to the being. Do you understand? So the more that we reapply the being, the hindrances are being reapplied. Hence, becoming a hindrance or a barrier to the attainment and experience of samadhi. Is that clear? Right? Okay. Paññā. Again, Paññā, okay, we'll go for the definition first. And where bhikkhus is a faculty of wisdom. Faculty of wisdom is within or can be seen within the understanding, grasping of the Four Noble Truths. I have again not translated Paññā. Usually it would be translated as wisdom. But here I have left it without translation because wisdom does not clearly denote the true meaning of Paññā within the practice attribute. Why? Because Paññā is almost, wisdom gives us a state of stagnant. It gives us, it's like it's just there. It almost seems like it's stagnant. Okay, I've got wisdom, but what does that mean? I've got wisdom. How can we measure that? It's not measurable. Paññā then in terms of practice is translated, I like the translation of discernment. Because what is discernment? You hear something, sunata dhareta charata. You listen to it, you bear it in mind, and you put it into practice. That is the application, the reapplication, the polishing, and the further polishing of what now we refer to as the Dhamma. Without the Dhamma going through that process, because my Dhamma does not apply to you. Because for me, I might resonate with a specific part of Dhamma. For you, you might resonate with another part of Dhamma. We would walk along the path by different means, but at the end, we must be able to connect the Dhamma to our personal, private lives in all its aspects. That is why we use the term discernment. Is that understood? Yeah, I'm looking at the camera, so please give me some motions with the head, okay? All right. Now the definitions are done, right? Now let's get to the real stuff. Okay. Now, I found this very, very busy picture, and I thought it was quite good to be included. Now, the world. The world is perceived through the six senses. The six senses creates the being. Bhante, Pannavamsa, Preeti, Shanti, Jayanta, Desmi, Sureka, Mayuri, Dil, all these people are created by the six senses, the way that we perceive the world. Right? We know people say you are the company you keep, birds of a feather flock together, all of these things. What does it denote? You are what your environment has put you through. The being. The being experiences suffering. Why? Because we connect to the world through the six senses, now which is deluded, now which is hindered, which is defiled. The being then suffers because this whole attribute is based on clinging. You drink a beautiful, wonderful, let's say, type of coffee with a certain amount of milk, blah, blah, blah. Now you really like it. Your wife or husband knows how to make it. Now you want it every single day. Now, when you don't have it, you think your husband or wife doesn't love you enough, and all of those things. Suffering. Then we have this. When the Indriyas function through Yoniso Manasikara, right attention, we are able to understand Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta. This suffering, when understood or put through a developed Indriya, we understand the impermanent suffering and non-self of the world. This is not depressing, although it might sound a bit depressing. This is not depressing. I will explain why it's not depressing as well. Okay. This enables a person to attain Nirvana. I have put it in this way to clearly denote the importance of Indriya. Right? And this is the busyness of the world. The five faculties are present in all beings, whether you're Buddhist or not, whether you have faith or not, whether you're a child or an adult, regardless. It is a part of one's cognitive process. The question comes into being then, okay, then we all have the Indriyas, but what is lacking is that cultivated Indriya, which gives one the resilience of mind to be able to cognize elements of the world in a way that it now fuels understanding and deeper insights, and not attachment and sorrow and suffering and all of that. Is that understood? Right? Good. Now, when we talk about the Indriyas, because now the Indriyas is something, right, which is present in each and every one of us. However, they might not be cultivated. For some, it might be. How can we purify the faculties in a way that they are cultivated, right? Or we are able to cultivate them. There are 15. So here, 5, 10, 15, okay? In case you're wondering where the 15 is. So it's 5, 10, 15, right? For a person who is trying to cultivate faith, he should avoid one who is faithless. Associate the faithful and should review Dhamma, which inspires faith. Now, this part of faith is something we have to really go deep into, because it is not about Buddhism. It is not about the Buddha, right? It is something beyond that. But we would assume that this is about the Shraddha that we have, with the Bodhi Pujas and other, this puja and that puja that we do. It is not, right? Effort. Avoid the indolent, associate those who exert effort, and should review the 4 right efforts which we have already covered. I am very happy to share the presentation with you for your further analysis after the session. Mindfulness. Avoid those who are not mindful, associate with those who are mindful, and then should review the satipathanas within themselves as a practice. Concentration. Avoid the unconcentrated, associate with those who are mentally concentrated, and should practice the jhana. Wisdom. Avoid the unwise, associate the wise, and conduct the conduct of profound wisdom. This is the application of wisdom and its grandiose nature in terms of affecting the way that we perceive and live in practice, right? In practice, I'm going to connect these, don't worry, right? Now, when we come into the Indriyas is Saddha, Virya, Sati, Samadhi, Paññā, faith, effort, mindfulness, concentration, and wisdom. Because of faith, we are going to go into what faith is. These 5 types of faculties are interconnected to one another. One cannot sustain without the help and support of another. The impact or the power of these Indriyas, however, fall to be centralized on the operation and effective nature of mindfulness within the mind. Remember, for example, a person who, let's say, a parents are the guardians of the children. It is the duty of a mother and the father to guard, to protect one's children. It is a responsibility, right? So, would a responsible parent, when their children are at home, bring in people who are wild, bring in people who can damage and harm their children? A responsible parent would not, isn't it? Mindfulness is like that parent. Mindfulness gives us the ability to be aware of what comes in and, of course, what goes out, what we speak, the way we act, and all of that. What we speak and how we act. What comes in through what? The 5 senses. The 5 senses. Because you see, this is important. Some people, or most people, when they're not on your side or when they don't know you, they might tell many, many things to you. They might hurt your confidence, say hurtful things. They might put you down. Not everyone in the world is supportive of what you do. So what are you going to do? Or what happens to a person who is not mindful? This person takes everything personally. Your neighbor says something to you, you take it personally. Your friend who is toxic says something to you, you take it personally. Sean, can you be a bit attentive and let everyone in, please? I'm sorry. Thank you. We have to then guard, or rather have this framework in mind, so that we are not harmed. Our personality, our confidence is not harmed by the insecurities and frailties of other people, the world. That is why mindfulness is important. The celebrated psychologist and philosopher Carl Jung says the unattended mind, which takes everything on a personal basis, is the reason for mass psychosis in the world. You take children now, right? They get offended by every little thing. I have a devotee, the son, the grandparents, of course, as Sri Lankans, they are very smiley, isn't it? We laugh and smile for everything. This kid is brought up in the UK. So when the grandmother smiles, the kid assumes that she's smiling at him or laughing at him. We get offended for a lot of things. Why? That sense of that lacks nature of mindfulness in our minds. Let's go into it a little bit. It'll be coming. We'll be speaking about it more. So faith, virya, samadhi, and paññā, we can draw examples and sort of compare it to a car. When the car is able to move forward because of the wheels, but where the car goes is determined by the person who is at the steering wheel. The steering wheel is mindfulness. The 4 faculties are the wheels. Do you understand? The 4 other faculties, other than mindfulness, these 4 are the wheels. And it drives the way that we go through life, right? A modern example that we could take now, countries like Sri Lanka, actually many countries of the world, we use war measures of economic growth and development, GDP, GRP, right? GDP, GRP, these are not effective methods of analyzing a country's development. For example, Africa would have a high output, but nothing that Africa produces comes to Africa. Sri Lanka might have, we don't need to speak about Sri Lanka. Let's move ahead. Right? So then countries like Bhutan, for example, who a lot of other countries are now studying, use gross national happiness as an index to measure the happiness of the people within their national boundaries, which has proven to be far more effective than using war measures such as GDP and GRP, right? Now, in another way, if we say, okay, we motivate our children to have, for example, role models, such as, these brilliant sort of, wealthy people who are, around the world, we let them sort of be, these people are made role models of children. People look up to Apple, Microsoft, and all of these people. But if you look at these people's lives, these people are wealthy and of course have achieved great success. However, they are mostly criminals. What are we teaching our children to look up to? This is where the Buddha says, where one's true attention should be put to a person's sustainable happiness, not happiness, sustainable happiness, rather than to wealth or any other sort of social measure of what a successful person is. Because I think as good parents, what we would expect is that our kids are happy. Moving on. Mindfulness as a moderator. The 5 faculty model of spiritual development is complete in itself, leading all the way to the destruction of the mental influxes. So when the Indriyas, this is a very vast topic, right? We have enough material to go on for, we can do a 5-week series on the Indriyas itself. It is a very vast topic, but it is also a very important topic. In the Apana Sutta, Sariputta explains that the faculties unfold in a progressive way. Faith leading to effort, effort leading to mindfulness, mindfulness leading to concentration, and concentration leading to wisdom. Of these 5, the faculty of wisdom is most highly valued as it stabilizes all of the other 4 faculties so that they become faculties. Remember, mindfulness is not a new thing in the world. It was not brought about by the Buddha. Mindfulness existed in the world far before the Buddha. However, where mindfulness became now an effective tool to attain enlightenment, as the Buddha taught, is in the incorporation of Paññā into sati, which is mindfulness. Whilst the Brahmins of the time were trying to reunite with Mahabrahma, the Buddha taught the way to exit the whole cycle of rebirth and death in its entirety. How is that? That is because of Paññā. I'm sorry, am I shouting? I get a bit passionate, you know.
Not at all, Bhante. It's perfect. Thank you.
Okay. Right. Yes. It is called the chief among the states that conduce to awakening and extolled in delightful similes. Technically, however, wisdom is contrasted with concentration. The purpose of concentration is to bring calm and clarity that leads to seeing into the true nature of things so that wisdom arises. Hence, technically, it is mindfulness. It is mindfulness that is placed in the center of the set, right? That is why mindfulness is placed in the middle. Do you understand? Right? Because without that sense of mindfulness, Paññā will go off boat. Just because a person has Paññā does not mean that this person can connect it to how Paññā would then help us. Right? We'll go into how that happens a bit after. Pairing of the faculties. A significant point regarding the faculties, not directly mentioned in the sutras but discussed in the commentaries, concerns a mutual and complementary pairing. Faith is paired with wisdom, balancing the emotional and intellectual sides of the spiritual life. Now, one would imagine that this has to be done through thinking, not entirely. We know a lot of things. You know, I mean, is there another population in the entirety of the world that listens to more Bala than Sri Lankans? We have 7 channels, for God's sake. Right? Who listens to more Bala? I mean, we are like walking encyclopedias with references to so many sutras and Attakathas and Tikas and Tippanis. Honestly, it is so difficult giving a talk to Sri Lankans because they know everything. Right? We listen to so much of Dhamma, isn't it? Right? We listen to so much of Dhamma. However, look at our Buddhists. What are we doing? Why is that? We are not applying that into our life. Sammaditthi might be there, but the Sammaditthi is not pouring over to the mind itself, where it becomes a part of our thought process. It's lacking. Effort is paired with concentration, balancing the activating and restraining aspects of mental cultivation. Right? Balancing the activating and restraining aspects of mental cultivation. A point to note, when a bhikkhu or a lay practitioner develops oneself within the path, often a thought that arises is, oh, I need to teach this to other people. Right? When a person now experiences something in vipassana, now the person thinks, I need to teach this to another person. That is a vipassana upaklesha. That is a hindrance to vipassana. That is where then effort comes in, as clearly stated here, balancing the activating and restraining aspects of mental cultivation. Do you understand? Sometimes, now we'll be going into examples, so I will not waste time here. Mindfulness sits in the middle, as it were, moderating between each end of the 2 pairs of faculties, holding them in harmonious interaction. Without knowing or being aware of how to balance these things, we are going to dig our own graves. If we have one aspect which is predominant, for example, let's say Paññā is predominant, you become very restless. You become rather concerned and critical of everything that is going around you, rather than focusing on yourself. We will go into these examples to understand how it can be detrimental if imbalance is present. Saddha and Paññā are taken together. When taken together, do not fit into faith and reason. Rather, they express a dynamic process where Saddha is active. This is the important part. Shraddha is active in one wanting to know, coming to know in part, and Paññā becomes more pervasive in one coming to know and knowing fully. With just Shraddha, you can't know fully, because Shraddha has an element which keeps you in the future. That when Prajna backs Shraddha, now the Shraddha comes into the present in a way that now one truly embraces what one has learned or what one now knows. Is that clear? No? Is that clear? Can I have some heads? Can I have a thumb down or a thumb up? When we take Shraddha, because Shraddha has this element of what does it say? Wanting to know. Wanting. It's in the future. Right? Prajna is more about knowing at the moment, understanding now, putting it into practice, tearing the Dhamma apart in a way where you understand the way this applies to your life. Is that now clear? Right? It'll become clearer in the future with the other slide. The doer, now this is about the meditation practice. The doer and the knower. This is very important. This is really important. Because when we meditate, we often find ourselves coming into or starting to meditate expecting something, right? We have an image that we have built because of our learning, our heritage, our culture, our understanding of a certain way, right? But that is the doer, not the knower. Let's see what it says. The imageries of the doer and the knower are helpful in meditation strategy because it helps us to identify which of the 5 spiritual faculties is dominating our meditation in a negative way, and what to do about it in order to balance and harmonize the practice. When we talk about balance, people would automatically sometimes assume, okay, I'm meditating too much, let me just relax a bit. No, that is not what the intention is. This sense of balance has to be found within you through letting go. And that is a working that is most inner, not outer. So through our practice, we learn how to come into a state of awareness, or rather, a state of balance in balancing those elements that arises in the mind. While the doer may be said to be the effect of our past conditionings, the knower is our present moment awareness, where we put aside, the doer can be past and present, but here I have denoted just the past, right? The past is Buddhist, is Hindu, is Muslim, is Christian, is Sri Lankan, British, European, rich, poor. That's the past. In the moment of being the knower, you are none of these things. Because in this present moment, You are just in a state of awareness. Awareness of what? Awareness of whatever object that arises in the mind. In terms of the spiritual faculties, the doer is a term for the predominance of faith or of wisdom. See, predominance of faith or of wisdom. That's the doer. When we know too much, sometimes this becomes a burden to our practice, right? The knower is the predominance of effort or of concentration, right? Mind you that it is in essentially as we progress in the path of practice, the doer and the knower will both disappear. They need to be balanced by mindfulness. Taking a step back, learning through our practice with our eyes closed, how do I let this go? How do I let Bhante and all that Bhante knows, how do I put it aside and come into this moment? We are convinced internally that for Bhante to exist, Bhante must know things. Bhante must like things. Bhante must act the way that Bhante should act or how it is expected of him to act. But in reality, Bhante is just a concept created by conditions of the past and the future. In understanding that fact, we are able to come or bring our minds to a state of peace, tranquility, and with a foundation of profound wisdom, to be now able to excel or transcend that grasp of suffering when faculties are unbalanced. If faith is predominant and wisdom is weak, we are likely to slavishly carry out our instructions, but fail to notice what is really going on in our minds. We are so convinced about the social norms of success in the world that we cling on to our jobs, our careers, the amount of money in our bank accounts, and the things that we can afford and the things we can't, that we forget that we have a family. We grasp onto social norms and social image to such an extent that it is only in your deathbed that you realize that you have not given attention to what truly matters. So now you feel like the loneliest person in the world because you do not know your children. The person that you loved, you have lost love for, the person probably hates you by this time and is happy that you're getting ready to depart. This is what we do, isn't it? I mean, the stories that I know are enough for me to really understand this myself. Wisdom can be too strong if we are intellectually inclined or perfectionist by nature. If we are intellectually inclined, we are likely to think too much rather than actually feel the meditation. People often treat meditation as a race to achieve something, to get somewhere. Again, the application of Atma, the self. Meditation is something which should be enjoyed within the present moment, integrated with warm embrace. When we have wisdom unbalanced or without a state of balance within this faculty of wisdom, we tend to think too much. We rationalize or try to find reasons for everything, but we try to find those reasons through the knowledge that we have. But in reality, you don't have this knowledge. You have to allow insight to arise. Insight cannot arise when we are grappling and grasping and clinging to this knowledge that you think is final. Mindfulness leads to balance. How? The doer is strongly controlled by past conditioning. The faith inclined by what he has been taught or what he believes in, and the wisdom inclined by what he has learned or thought about. In either case, mindfulness helps in teaching us to let go of the past or conditioning and to simply watch the present moment, say by simply smiling at it, with which displaces our thinking inclination. People find it very difficult to progress beyond the means that they assume that they have the potential for. This is very biological as well. In the processes of cognition, the amygdala does not allow us to propel beyond what it thinks is safe for us. So if our bodies and minds have the ability and true potential of doing, let's say, 100%, the amygdala will stop us by 20. Why? This is your safety balance. The only tool in the world through science which has been found and proved to be efficient and effective in further enhancing and really stretching this safety boundary to now move from 20% to 30, 40, 50, 60 is meditation. So for example, when you try to sit down for meditation or you go for a retreat and you are now sort of in so much of fear, oh my gosh, there's going to be so much of pain, I'm not going to be able to do it. This is the amygdala speaking, trying to stop you from what it thinks you're doing something which is stupid. This is not entirely true. That is why mindfulness is important. The biological chemistry of the brain itself will change and go through a metamorphical change when we enroll ourselves within this practice. It's truly life-changing. In simple terms, we can say that when the faith-inclined doer fails to do anything about his meditation, the wisdom-inclined is doing too much. Hence, mindfulness is needed for us to be aware of the actual weakness in either case. A meditation teacher or spiritual friend can be very helpful here to help us balance our practice. The knower is our present moment awareness that is not doing it rightly. Why? Because the person, Atma, you see, self. The knower is self. Or we are simply unable to keep our focus on what is really going on in our meditation. The knower is then said to be weak. The knower is said to be weak when he is dominated by effort or by concentration. Why? Effort and concentration carry or can carry, when not balanced, the message or the spirit of Atma, self. When too much effort is put into our meditation, we fail to allow calmness to arise. In fact, we are overwhelmed by the thought of doing something rather than simply feel whatever is arising at the moment and then letting it go. In this sense, we are future-oriented. Atma again, future-oriented is Atma again, and getting excited about our goal. Our mental energies are going out there rather than working gently in here to what is at hand. Is that understood? We'll be going into it. Oh. Now, where does all of this matter? Right now, can you see the chart? I know it's rather small, but this one, you can see it. Okay, this is Paticcasamuppada, right? This is Paticcasamuppada. This is the cycle of Paticcasamuppada dependent origination. Avijja paccaya sankhara, sankhara paccaya viññāna, viññāna paccaya nāmarupa, nāmarupa paccaya salayatana, salayatana paccaya passo, passa paccaya vedana, vedana paccaya tanha, tanha paccaya upadana, upadana paccaya Bhavo bhavapaccaya jati jati paccaya jara marana soka parideva dukkha domana supayasa sambhavanti. This is Paticca. This is where we all mess it up. This is why we experience or we live within this cycle of rebirth and death, doing the same things over and over and over and over again, thinking that we're actually achieving something. How do we come out of it? Right? We come out of it through this process which is known as, transcendental Paticca, which is where we transcend this cycle of rebirth and death. How do we do that? We do that through seeing suffering. Suffering is very important. We should never run away from suffering. Yes, of course, we should try to make our lives less suffer. We should try to make our lives comfortable and, but regardless of how comfortable your life might be, you will always have suffering in your life. This is how we have been programmed. This is in neuropsychology. This is what is known as a neuro set point. You win the lottery, you buy your dream house, your dream car, you buy everything that you so demanded, you wanted, right? Because of your money, you were able to marry the woman or man of your dreams also. Right? No one wants to marry a broke person, come on. Right? But what happens because of your neuro set point, you might experience happiness for effectively a year. That is what neuropsychology says, a year. And within a year, the Rolls Royce doesn't make you that much happier. The mansion doesn't make you much happier. So now you have to keep on. Now, sometimes families, what they do is after a year of marriage, now they want to have children. Spice things up. They have children. Children have become within families a way of sort of overcoming the monotony of marriage. Why? Something to keep them going, something to focus on, something to distract them by. We, of course, see these things in a way, family is not complete without children, but a load of lies. It is not so. All of this is because of this Paticca. Knowing it's through suffering, seeing it through Yonisomanskara Indriya is what enables a person to now step into transcendental Paticca, where one effectively is now on the course towards enlightenment. Is that understood? But we are not going to talk about Paticca. That's a whole course on its own. What I want you to understand is this suffering. This part right here, this connection which leads you to Nibbana, which is here, and displaces you from the course of rebirth and death. Suffering. This suffering can only effectively be seen. We wail, we say, of course, I'm suffering. But that is not the seeing of suffering. That is just the attachment to comfort. The seeing of suffering and the attachment of comfort are two different things. The attachment to comfort now creates what? Dosa, hatred. Self-hate, hate towards family, hate towards people who make your life uncomfortable. The realizing of suffering empowers one to do better. Is that understood? So if you're complaining about everything that is wrong in the world, please do not think that you're a good Buddhist. You are not. You are just a drama queen.
Bhante, if I may disturb you there for just a moment, just to say, from coming from a drama queen, perhaps, that we are approximately 15 minutes away from the allocated time, Bhante. Sorry to disturb you.
Oh, no, we have. Okay. We have 12 slides more. Okay, let's get this done. Understanding suffering. Understanding suffering comes through the Four Noble Truths. In short, one has faith in one's own effort. Now, this is an important point. I just love this point. In short, one has faith in one's own effort, beginning with the understanding of the true nature of being, which is the five aggregates. Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana. Yes, Rupa Vedana Sanya Sankhara Vijnana is the being, the five aggregates. Materiality, Rupa, Vedana, sensations, what you like to feel, what experiences you like, all of that, and dislike. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, perception, the way you perceive the world is different from other people, isn't it? Because that perception is unique to you, because that is yourself. Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankhara, the mental factors, and the mental factors is like the spice in a curry. You can't eat anything without salt and pepper. No? The mental factors are like that, salt and pepper and all the spices, right? Because that is again the uniqueness to you, your being. And then the consciousness, which is vijnana, right? This faith is not merely that of one's knowing that one is liberated or on the path to liberation, but more importantly, wait for the point, it is a lucid joy as a result of that direct knowledge. Do you understand the lucid joy? When you know something so clearly, so lucidly, you find yourself absolutely changed. You are a different person. That is what is known as this understanding. It is not just knowing the theory of the Dhamma. It is that embracing of the Dhamma by the warmest places of your heart. Shraddha, cognitive and affective, right? Faith, now this is Shraddha. This is important because you will know why it's important. I'm not going to waste time. Faith in its cognitive dimension is seen as concerning belief in the prepositions or statements of which one does not or perhaps cannot have knowledge proper, right? You cannot have knowledge proper of certain things. So then we have this sense of cognitive faith. Why? We were groomed to believe in a certain thing, to accept a certain angle of thought. But when questioned about it, the only thing that you do is you get a bit defensive. Why? So entrenched in that conditioning. Faith in its affective dimension is a more straightforward, positive response to trust or confidence towards something or somebody. The conception of Shraddha in Buddhist writings appears more almost, if not entirely, affective. Please do not believe something just because the Buddha has said it. Do not believe anything that I say. Do not believe anything that a popular monk who has 12,000, 15,000 followers on Facebook says. Come on, grow up. This is not the way that the Buddha has taught the Dhamma. We really need to look at what we are doing. Lady Sayadaw 2 speaks of two kinds of faith: ordinary faith, Pakati Shraddha, and the faith through cultivation, Bhavana Shraddha. Manuals of Buddhism is an incredible book. If you want to get your hands on it, it's available online free of charge on PDF version. Ordinary faith is mainly based on giving and pious acts, which can be either wholesome or unwholesome depending on the intention. Faith through cultivation is founded on mindfulness practice and meditation that leads one to a direct knowing of reality and spiritual liberation. Example, ordinary faith mainly based on giving and pious acts. According to Buddhism, or rather according to Buddhist culture, we have the practice of Malagiya Ñātīnට පින් අනුමෝදන් කිරීම. Offering of merits to departed relatives. What do? We organize sermons, we organize dhanas, we organize pujas, pinkcomers, and all of this with the main intention of sharing merit. According to the philosophy which governs the true directions of parami, the Buddha clearly states that this is a Dhamma practice. Why? Let me tell you why. Because anything which is done through the act of, or through what is regarded as Buddhist faith, should be something which reduces lobha, dosa, moha, and should entirely be of the person who is receiving it. Organizing something to get something in return, even if it is merit, if the intention is this trade-off process, which sometimes, most of the time it is, right? It is something which is seen as adhammika, right? For example, I give a monthly dana because my parents have been giving a monthly dana. The Buddha clearly denotes that this is not a Dhammic practice which leads to the perfections or the cultivation of perfections. You have to give because you want to give and you are convinced of the right intentions and the right results of giving. Katinas. People do a lot of katinas because of that barrage of good results that has been said, right? I would really encourage everyone to really open one's eyes and really pay attention to what you're doing, because what you are essentially doing is you're doing a katina to get or to be reborn in heaven and never come back to hell and all of these reasons. Come on. This is not the reason why the Buddha Sarasankhya Kalpalaksha Buddhajam Vahanse Parami Guna Praguna Karagana Le Atamasnara Dandunne මෙන්න එවැනි හීන ධර්මයක් අපිට අනුගමනය කරන්න නෙමෙයි. Really, what the hell are we doing? We have to really understand the motivations behind our actions, right? Motivations behind our actions. Now, stories of faith, right? I'm going to give you guys some time to ask questions as well. Stories of faith. Now, Bakkali. You might know the story of Bakkali, but to those of you who do not, who was Bakkali? Bakkali was a young Brahmin. He absolutely loved the Buddha. So cute. He loved the Buddha. And what he did was, he was just staring at the Buddha all the time. You know, when I was 13 and I was reading this book on Dhamma, and I came across this part where the Buddha stares at the Bodhi tree after attaining enlightenment. As a way of showing gratitude, you know, I came up with this bright idea to stare at my mother. To say the least, she was not impressed. So Bakkali, what did Bakkali do? Bakkali was gazing at the Buddha, right? And what did the Buddha say? Bakkali, what is there to look upon this filthy body? Bakkali, he who sees the Dhamma sees me. In due course, upon the Buddha's further admonition, Bakkali becomes an Arahant and is declared the foremost of those monks who show faith. Why? Bakkali then wanted to see the true Buddha, so he saw the Dhamma. That is why. That is why he was the foremost in faith. He wanted to see the real Buddha. Let us try to also see the real Buddha for who he truly was. Honestly. This story of effort. Sona Kolivasa. As a layman, Sona Kolivasa plays the lute, the veena. While living in the cool forest near Rajagaha, Sona tries to meditate but is distracted by numerous visitors. He puts in great effort in his walking meditation until his feet burst into sores, right? It says that the walking meditation path was bloody. with the blood that was bleeding out from his source. He was so, that was the level of his effort, but his effort was not wise. What did the Buddha say? The Buddha visits him, beginning his instruction with the famous simile of the lute. When tuned too tightly or too loosely, it is not possible to play the lute. But when well tuned, it gives good music. Sona balances up his practice, attains his goal, and in due course is declared by the Buddha to be the foremost of those monks who exert effort. Why? He was able to balance the effort. That balance is important. Then the story of concentration. Moggallana, this is the last slide, by the way. Moggallana, on the 7th day of his joining the order, Moggallana goes into an intensive retreat. Fatigue and torpor overcome him during his meditation. The Pachala Sutta relates how the Buddha admonishes him on how to overcome his difficulties. While listening to the Buddha expounding these teachings on the meditation of elements, Dhatu, Kammatthana, Moggallana wins 3 higher paths and the chief disciples perfection by attaining Arahanta. What is that? He was listening to the Buddha with concentration. That is how people of the time were able to attain Nibbana, just by listening. Because they were actually, their minds were in a state of concentration, fueled by the other 4, actually all of the 5 Indriyas. They were focused. Their minds were suppressing the hindrances every second. With every word, they were able to directly relate it to their life, their minds, their bodies, their reality, their conditions. Hence, being able to attain to this state of enlightenment, story of wisdom. Now, this is of Sariputta. On meeting Assaji, one of the first 5 monks, Sariputta, one of the first 5 monks, Sariputta is impressed by the former's calm demeanor. Right now, relate this story. Calm demeanor. These people were enlightened. Assaji and the 5 first monks were enlightened, the most senior disciples of the Buddha. When Sariputta persists in asking for it, now this is the point. Sariputta is taken about by his calm demeanor. But he doesn't let that be his guiding light. He doesn't accept Assaji yet. What does he do? When Sariputta persists in asking for a teaching from Assaji, now that is where wisdom comes in. He did not let the calm demeanor fool him. He wanted to know, was this guy for real? So what did he do? Sariputta persists to ask for a teaching from Assaji. He utters this famous verse. Ye Dhamma hetu pabhava te sanghetu tathagato haha te sancha nirodho emang vadi mahasamano. Of all things that arise from a cause, their cause the Tathagata has told. As soon as Sariputta, then called Upasissa, hears these 2 first lines, he established in the fruit of stream meaning. Do not assume that the fruit of stream meaning was because of the part of Tathagata. It was because of all conditioned things that arise from a cause. This itself was able to tell Sariputta, if it arises, it passes away. That was wisdom. It was not because of the Tathagata. It was not because of the part of Te Sanghetu Tathagatoaha. It was a part of Ye Dhamma Hetu Pabhava. Do you understand? And then Assaji says, and also their cessation, Te Sanchan Yo Nirodho, this too the great sage has told. Now see, it was cause and effect. Cause and effect. Something that he did not get from his teacher who he was currently following. Right? Faith. Oh no, we did faith. Okay. Now, what are the takeaways? The takeaways are the fact. Let me just skip this. The takeaways are the fact that the Indriyas, when practiced, allows a person to truly comprehend what is going on. The Indriyas are powers, are the leaders of your cognition, and it is through truly being able to be aware of these different parts of cognition arising in the mind that a person is now able to cultivate the true elements of power, Bala, in life. Otherwise, Indriyas are not constant. Do not think that Indriyas are constant. Indriyas are constant when mindfulness is present. When Yoniso Manasikara through mindfulness is present, Indriya is constant. It is in the reapplication of this Yoniso Manasikara that the Indriya is now able to, everything that arises in one's life through the eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and sometimes the mind, that one is able to now deduct the fact that everything that arises passes away. There is so much more to say. However, we only have 1 hour, which I have already exceeded. Right? So, my gosh. Okay. In the balas being put into practice, we now, just like, for example, Indra holds the thunderbolt in the person's hands. Now the 5 faculties becomes like that thunderbolt that one holds. You now begin to have the power over your mind and body, or else everyone else, society is the one who is puppeteering you. Something becomes popular, we run behind that. Something becomes more a way of showing affection and all of that, it becomes that. In our lives turns in due course with what seems to be attractive. So what? Each and every single day we move on from the fact of connecting to our true real selves to living a life conditioned by everything which is external, that we make it internal. This is what the Indriyas and Balas do. Maybe in a different light we can sort of go deeper, but there is so much more. It's far more. We can go into the Paticcasamuppada, the transcendental, the 4 noble truths, and then into perceival, cognitive perceival, and all of these things that arise. It's a whole. We have not gone into Shraddha. We have all of that part, understanding what true Shraddha is. So what I would encourage you to do is research. Research and find out for yourself, what is the true Dhamma? Am I doing what is correct and right? Things that is conducive to my path. Do not assume there is 20 million people in Sri Lanka. Majority of our population are registered Buddhists in the birth certificates. The Buddha says that the Dhamma is only for the wise. Do you think majority of our 20 million population is wise? For sure not. For sure not. What wise means is a person who wields the ability to put aside one's shame, to put aside one's cognitive shraddha, and to say, what is this? To be able to discern what is happening. That is the role of the wise. The ones who would say sadhu, sadhu, and just believe is the role of the foolish. Is the role of the foolish. Our Dhamma, I'm going to end with this, Krishani. Our Dhamma, something that I always tell, my Dhamma center attendees and, is the Dhamma, we know Sati. Sati is one Chaitasika within the 52 Chaitasikas. It is one very small part of the mind which is effective in many parts of Dhamma. This Sati has been taken by the Western world. And the Sati alone is what secular mindfulness in the Western world represents. It is a $4.7 billion industry at the moment. And that is just Sati. There is true value in the doctrine. I would encourage all of you to do your research, to go deeper into finding out what is it that we truly have to do to encourage a deeper understanding of the practice and implement this into your life. Yeah. All right. So that is it. Any questions? Kishani?
Yes, thank you, Bhante. Thank you very much. I'm not sure what that is. What is that? What is that? Beg your pardon?
Kishani, are you speaking to me?
My humble apologies, Bhante. This is what happens when one's children do online schooling and use one's device and use it for various school purposes. My apologies to everyone listening to such a pious and pleasant discussion and being entertained at the end of it with popular music. My apologies. Thank you, Bhante. Venerable Hokandara Pannavamsa, we are always so honored and grateful by your presence. I'm not going to give thanks yet because we still have a little bit of time for questions. And we have one here, Bhante, where Samantha has asked, Bhante, could you please give us an example or a situation of how one can apply mindfulness incorporating the two, Sampajana and Yonasomisikara? Please, if you could give us an example, please.
Okay. So, okay. Yonasomisikara is a bipartisan of mindfulness. Yonasomisikara and mindfulness has to be incorporated and brought together, or else it is not effective. So if we had more time, we could have actually gone into that part of stuff, which is another whole dimension, right? Yonasomisikara, to those of you who are not familiar with the word, is right attention. There's Yonasomisikara and Ayonasomisikara. Right attention is the scope by which mindfulness activates itself or puts itself into practice. Because it is through the filter of Yonasomisikara that mindfulness works. So Samantha, it is the same thing. But we refer to Yonasomisikara separately to denote that the mind can be conditioned in such ways where the mind automatically may, in certain ways, take Ayonasomisikara routes or Yonasomisikara routes, right? Now, for example, when we are not learned or when we are not seasoned in being within the present moment, right? And let's say, let's say young parents who have young children, right? Very stressful. Very, very stressful. I don't know. Growing up, watching movies and all of these things, some movies, they say the beauty of parenthood and all of this. I can't relate to that. Personally, seeing and hearing, what parenthood, it's a lot of stress. Yes, beautiful when the child doesn't cry and the child doesn't nag for stuff, right? But majority of the time, the child cries and nags for stuff and you have to protect the child. And this brings a whole amount of difficulties. When a person is unskilled or with the unseasoned mind, what happens? The parent holds on to that stress. So now yesterday's stress is linked with today's stress. Tomorrow's stress or stress person a week after is going to have a week of stress that they are managing. That is ayoniso manasikara. Because now, one fine day, you're going to blow. Why? Because the burden is too much. Imagine the Buddha being the person who talked so highly of seclusion and the value of seclusion, surrounded himself by more than 5,500 to 5,000 to 15,000 monks a day. The person who spoke so highly of seclusion, how was he able to really be living in seclusion with so many people when it is difficult for us to live with 4 people at home? Yoniso manasikara, allowing the person to be in the present. Is that understood, Samantha?
Yes, thank you, Bhante. But I was just wondering, just quickly, so that word sampajana as well, that's incorporated into mindfulness. So that's clear comprehension. Is that analyzing the purpose to separate, distinguish between that from yoniso manasikara? Is that the analyzing the purpose of a act, your wholesome act, hopefully, why you're being mindfulness? So yeah, that sampajana thing. That's why I was just wondering what that is.
Consciousness, vijnana, yoniso manasikara, sampajana. Put arrows in between.
Ah, okay. But isn't consciousness and vijnana the same thing?
Exactly. But
yeah.
Consciousness must arise first to take the object, Samantha.
Oh yeah, attention. Yeah, okay. Awareness. Yeah.
That ground in the yoniso manasikara arises.
Yeah.
Right? That yoniso manasikara leads to that sampajanya. But our practice is seasoned. All of this happens at once. You don't need to force yourself. Sampajanya just arises.
What does that sampajanya mean?
For example, the clear comprehension. That sampajanya, like for example, when you know who your child is, right? You know child so well, or you know your husband or wife so well that even from a crowd of people, even from just seeing the shoulder, you know who this guy is. That's your husband, that is your wife, that is your child. Isn't it? It just arises almost automatically.
Yeah.
When the person becomes seasoned, when this becomes a practice where you're applying it again and again, it becomes so clear in such, without that forcing or instigation.
Ah, right. Okay.
That is the place. That is why Sammaditya alone is not enough. We all know, we all know so much of Dhamma, but we are not applying the Dhamma to our daily lives, to our mental thought processes. So now we must force ourselves, to apply the Dhamma.
Yeah.
But when you make it a gradual process where you're applying the Dhamma, when you can, and whenever, every opportunity that you're presented, now you become the Dhamma. Dhammo have rakkati dhammachari is not a god of Dhamma or the Buddha coming to help you. It is you yourself protecting you.
Right. Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you. I like that one. So it's the vijnana, yoniso manasikara, and then sampajana. Thank you, Bhante.
Ask again in the evening today, Samantha, in the class.
Yes. Thank you.
Anyone else? I'm sorry we are keeping you for so long. I've gone overboard.
Bhante, can I ask something, please? Bhante? Can I ask something?
Yes, you can, but you're echoing.
Can you hear me now?
Echoing again, but it's okay. Maybe we can bear with it until you quickly answer the question.
Yeah, right. What? Can you hear me? Is it echoing still? Is it better?
Much better.
Okay. So Bhante, what I was thinking is, now we spoke about consciousness and about the mindfulness and yoniso manasikara, the wise attention, giving rise to sampajana, which is clear comprehension. But Bhante, when you were talking, clear comprehension. I have heard it been saying that is what is normally Sampajana is translated. That is still comprehension. If you look in English, when we do comprehension, it's still where the mind is getting engaged. But the real thing is this lucidity or the clarity. That's what it is. And this is why Ajahn Sumedha calls it intuitive awareness, because it is something that is spontaneously through mindfulness you get. Sorry, Bhante. Thank you.
For pointing that out. Yes, again, a flaw in the translation, right? That is, you become an embodiment of Dhammic attention. And that is what we have to reach. That is what, thank you, Dil. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bhante, because in your thing, because it is only now I'm ready. It's the lucidity, the clarity, not so much the discernment. Yes, that's in the process of understanding, but finally it's that lucidity and you just know it in the present.
Until we get there, of course.
Right, the discernment. Yeah, that's a practice. That is the Dhamma Patipada. You have to keep on looking at it and the discernment. Thank you, Bhante, for bringing these gems out, which are lost normally in the traditional ways of thinking. So I'm very grateful for this teaching of yours, Bhante. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone else? Or maybe we have just...
Bhante, if you can hear me.
Yes, a bit fade, Kishani.
Yes. Is this a little bit better? Not quite.
Better,
let me increase that. Yep. Yeah, let me just do that. Is that better?
Okay, still better? A bit fade, but I can... Yeah.
Sorry, let me speak out. So there is a question that a lot of Sri Lankans, we tend to have generous amounts of Shraddha. We attend Dhamma sermons, speak highly afterwards of these sermons. However, at the end of it, one goes home and not much that was discussed in this sermon is actually practiced. So how would you, Bhante, guide someone to move beyond this concept of Shraddha into actual, the understanding of the true essence, really?
Yeah. I would say the first thing is one has to really rethink the way one's lifestyle is. It's not that people want to forget. It's because people's minds work in such a busy manner that they forget to remember. Because from one object to another, people mean no disrespect. People want, that is why all of you are all here. However, we have so many things going on in our lives that we are unable to see what is truly happening. So changing our lifestyles in a way that is more sustainable. Sustainable living, the Buddha is the first person who spoke about sustainable living. In a way that we do not burn ourselves out. In a way that we are able to day by day develop ourselves and grow closer to what true happiness is. If that is done, if you are not happy, or if you do not realize the fact that you are living an unsustainable life, nothing you do is going to bring you happiness or sustainability. We have to realize that there is something which is off. It is in that process, I believe, Kishani, that people will then find their ways into truly working with the Dhamma. And I think COVID-19, to a certain aspect, I'm sorry to say, I know that Sri Lanka is really suffering, but for us here at the Dhamma Center in the UK, and I think I can speak on behalf of all of our, the Dhamma, we don't call them devotees, they are a part of our family, because we see each other 6 days a week, and learn the Dhamma. And something that we have all collectively realized is before we wanted to go to a temple to practice. Now we have realized that we can practice the Dhamma from home, basically because I have been literally spoon feeding and really putting it down their throats, But we have come to this realization that this can be done at home, right? I think in Sri Lanka, something that I'm really fearing. Honestly, it makes me very scared. We are coming into the age of the internet to such an intense level that the age of social media monks is not something which is good for the sasana. People very soon, mark my words, within the next 3 years, you will not respect monks, or rather, the respect for monks will gravitate from moral wisdom to the amount of followers they have on Instagram. This is sad. We need to really question ourselves about what is happening. And I would like to recall the instance where the Buddha, at a certain congregation with the monks, it was the day of Uposatha. And the Buddha was not speaking. All the monks were pin drop silent, and the Buddha was not speaking. Sariputta, no, Ananda, no, Sariputta. Venerable Sariputta wondered why isn't the Buddha speaking? Right? He remained silent. Sariputta used his knowledge and saw that there was an impure monk in the congregation who had become Parajika. What did Sariputta do? Walked up to the monk, took him by the ear, opened the door, threw him out. Please do not feel that you are obliged to accommodate and entertain people who are abusing their positions of power. A good friend of the Dhamma Center once asked me, Bhante, I am a person who cannot stand injustice, but in, Buddhist culture, we do not speak out. We are, so I feel like I'm doing something wrong in questioning this. I said, no, you're not doing something wrong. You're doing what you should be doing. You should not entertain these things. We should be very careful on who we support and who we entertain in this Dhamma practice. Because think of it, just like you, hundreds of thousands of other people are doing the same thing. And remember, do not assume that you are a small, insignificant person. It is said that a regular person associates 1,000 people within their lifetime. So a regular person is able to influence a life, the way of life, and the journey of life of 1,000 people. So when you influence 1,000 people, those 1,000 people have 1,000 people in their lives that they influence. You standing up means you're motivating so many more to stand up. You are part of the problem if you remain silent. And I am very strict on that. Why? Because if we entertain abuse and corruption, especially, I'm not a politician. I'm not talking about, I don't care about politics, but I am talking about the sasana which I have committed my whole life to. And it is my responsibility to then be able to say these things and to motivate all of you to say, you do not have to entertain these jokers. And if you remain quiet, you are part of the problem. You are as corrupt as a person who is doing whatever they are doing. Always remind yourself, do not go behind Mark, just like Sariputta. He was taken aback by the demeanor of Asaji, but he did not let that be the guiding light. What did he do? He asked him a question. And that was what triggered the shraddha that he had, the acceptance of that person. Acceptance of that person. This responsibility falls to each and every monk. In the Dhamma Center, we have policies, Now, the Sri Lankans might think of policies in a temple. Of course, in the UK, we have to have policies that govern an institution, right? This is law and this is a legal requirement. In the policy, we have child protection and vulnerable adult safeguarding policies, which I, together with very, very, very good lawyers, have put in place. I'm very, I can share these documents with you for your Now, which temple in Sri Lanka has a policy of safeguarding? In my policy, it has been strict, and we have 3 safeguarding officers who I have then told to, if by any chance that I am to abuse my power and then sort of incur a wrongdoing, I have 3 people, not one, because one person can easily be frailed away from it because it's a hard task. 3 people to make sure that I go to prison. That I go to prison. This is a severity by which the Dhamma Center handles issues of safeguarding. If I am to in any way do this or hurt another person's life, I have asked these 3 people to ensure and to not stop until I am in prison. That is how we remark the importance of safeguarding. Where is safeguarding within temples and other religious organizations? How much of abuse is going on, and why are we supporting these people? This is something that we all have to think about. All right. So,
thank you, Bhante.
Any other questions?
Thank you, Bhante. I think considering that we have already taken much of your valuable time and of course our listeners, I think we would perhaps get round to wrapping up this evening's session. However, we have Anicca from the Insight Meditation Center just to express a few words of appreciation on behalf of everyone. Bhante. Anicca?
Yeah, thank you, Kishani. On behalf of the Insight Meditation Center Committee and all of you who participated in this online sermon, we express our sincere gratitude to Bhante Pannavamsa for kindly accepting our invitation and delivering a beautiful and timely sermon imparting your wisdom on Pancha Indriya and Bala. Bhante, we are aware of all the meritorious work you do through Dhamma Center in Colchester, UK. May all your noble aspirations be fulfilled. Mrs. Kishana Jayasinghe Vijaysekara, we sincerely appreciate your expert moderation of the program and wish you continued success in all your Dhamma work. We are grateful to our donors, Desmi and Jayanta Kapuatta, for sponsoring today's sermon. We appreciate the guidance and support extended by Venerable Bambaragama Somaratana Thero, Chief Incumbent of Jinendra Ramya, along with the untiring efforts of the IMC committee members for organizing this gift of Dhamma to commemorate Poson, Poya, and to invoke merit to all affected by the pandemic, especially in Sri Lanka. Teruvan Saranai Bhante.
Thank you very much. And before we close up the session, I would especially like to share merit with Desmi and Jayanta for and the intention behind the sponsorship was to share the Dhamma, to give the community and to listen to Dhamma as a Dhamma, and to share merits with all the departed relatives and anybody who is expecting any sort of merit, and to also confer blessings towards all the people all around the world who are undergoing enormous amounts of suffering due to the current climate of the pandemic and because of the socio-economic problems that we are all experiencing all around the world. So with all the merits that we have all cultivated and developed through the listening of the Dhamma, there are share merits with all these beings in a way that through this Dhamma, may they be able to travel from light to light, dark to light, enabling them to attain to the highest states of mind and finally into Nibbana. May all of you be well and happy. And also, we want to sort of wish Surekha, who has been instrumental in sort of inviting me and getting all of these things, Surekha, and I heard in the morning that her sister are both having hand injuries. So we wish Surekha and the sister as well a fast recovery, enabling them to text and type again. So,
Bhante, sorry, if I just may take a moment also just to take this, just before we lose everyone, just a gentle reminder about the Dhamma Center in Colchester. If you want any more information, everything is available on the website, www.dhammacenter.uk. So that's with the CENTRE.uk. Of course, contacts at the Insight Meditation Center, our wonderful Sureka that Bhante just mentioned, her phone number +94, so I'll give it to you with the prefix of Sri Lanka, +94 777 281500. If anyone wants it, please just send us a message and we'll put it on the chat. I'll do that anyway at the end of this session. And of course, Inoka, who gave us a few words of thanks, +94 777 480-119. I would be remiss, of course, in not thanking Sean also for participating in putting all this together. Kavi, who worked in the background, putting the whole, tying all the strings together, but also this is not a vote of thanks, but just once more, Venerable Thero, you always give us such insight and wisdom, of course, with clarity and depth, but more than anything, I think with a touch of humor, which we truly appreciate. Of course, for this, we are grateful for the Punnyanamodana. So Bhante, I leave it to you. And before we sign off, to wish everybody a very blessed Poya Day.
If anyone would like to refer back to the presentation that I did today, I'm very happy to share it. I will share it with Sureka so that if anyone belongs to Sureka will know how to sort of get it to. So take care and goodbye. Thank you so much, Kishani. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you everyone, and good night. We bid you much metta, and a very good night and a very blessed and peaceful Poson Poya Day tomorrow. Sad, sad, sad.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Thank you, Bhante. Thiruvan Saranai.
Thank you, Bhante. Everyone, Saranai.